How's it going, guys? I recently watched Disney's 1986 animated feature, The Great Mouse Detective. If this movie's known for anything, it's for not being talked about at all. However, I was blown away by how good this movie is. It's from directors Ron Clements and John Musker, who are also behind classics like The Little Mermaid and Hercules, as well as The Princess and the Frog and Moana. The Great Mouse Detective is such a beautifully paced story, and its Sherlock Holmes style plot works equally for children and adults. However, what really blew me away regarding this film is the villain, probably the most underrated aspect of the whole movie. So let's take a second to discuss Professor Ratigan. He's not actually a professor in the traditional sense. He's a crime lord, a mob boss, a powerful figure, as well as Detective Basil's rival of several years. In the film, he creates an elaborate plan to kidnap the Queen of Mousedom and replace her with a robot clone that would allow him to rule the country. He's so ambitious, smart, and in general he does whatever he can to make his goals reality. His determination is exacerbated by his very convincing and villain-like demeanor, which makes him so amusing to watch on screen. The plan to kidnap the Queen is largely what makes him a great villain. It's so clear-cut, foolproof, creative, and evil, yet in such a fun way. It almost feels like something out of a bonkers Mission Impossible movie. The general idea of it also accentuates the Victorian, late 1800s, Sherlock Holmes-esque environment of the film. I love how they take the atmosphere of the movie to another level, and how they take the lore behind a society inhabited and run by mice to another level as well. Ratigan has numerous henchmen, who he manipulates to get him where he wants to be, and those henchmen don't feel like throwaway characters like some do in other classic Disney movies. I'm specifically talking about Fidget. While I didn't grow up with this movie, I've heard many people talk about how scary Fidget was when they were children, and I think there's enough said right there. Another thing that makes Professor Ratigan a great villain is how sheerly intimidating he is, even just appearance-wise. He's like 5 times the size of Detective Basil, which makes him at least look like a real threat. He and Detective Basil sort of set an example of the big and small main character trope. For example, George and Lenny in Of Mice and Men, or maybe better examples, Mike and Sully in Monsters Inc., or Maui and Moana in Moana. The smaller character always tends to have the brains, and the bigger one the brawn. This is true with The Great Mouse Detective, but Professor Ratigan also has just enough brains to pose a real threat as a villain. His rivalry with Detective Basil is a constant cat and mouse game, no pun intended, and with the help of his henchmen, Professor Ratigan always forces Basil to think one step ahead. There are even a couple times in the film where Ratigan knows Basil well enough to literally ambush him. Not to mention, prior to the events of the film, Basil had been trying to trace Ratigan for years, and Olivia's mystery being connected to Ratigan is literally the only reason Basil was on board to help solve it. One thing I hate about main characters sometimes is when they don't have weaknesses and never show any vulnerability. The first 2 characters that come to mind are Alita from Alita Battle Angel and Captain Marvel from the MCU. These are 2 examples of characters who are given powers with no consequences and can essentially just have all the fun they want with them. Since I'm calling Professor Ratigan Disney's best villain, what is his Achilles heel, his kryptonite? Well, it's the fact that he's a rat. Throughout the entire movie, he hates it when people refer to him as a rat. When he gets angry in the movie, we see a less composed, more wild and animalistic side of him just scratch the surface. However, the climax of the movie is when things really get interesting. After Basil escapes all of Ratigan's traps, foils all of Ratigan's plans, ultimately takes everything from Ratigan, he simply loses it. He wants nothing more than Basil dead, and we see that in the final showdown between the two. He doesn't care anymore. We see him crawl like a rat, tear through his clothes, become more untamed, aggressive, and rat-like. That's right, it's not only his behaviors, but visually in this amazing cinematic image. What a great idea this was! This is the best job Disney has ever done to show a villain lose it and fight like they never have before, to let go of the things that made them respectable, to lose their reputation, and just do anything they can to kill the protagonist. The whole idea of the features of a mouse versus the features of a rat in this movie are so cool and make all of the characters being rodents completely justified. You know, aside from the movie being for children who like cute animals. In the end, it seems that Basil's intellect was too much for Ratigan, even after Ratigan's transformation into a more giant feral rat who had been hiding from us this whole time. A great villain also depends on the protagonist, and Basil and Ratigan are perfect for one another. They come so close in terms of wits, but Basil has just a little bit more of what it takes to outsmart the other. It's that kind of relationship that makes a great story. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have you seen The Great Mouse Detective? And if so, what did you think? Please leave a comment. I'm dying to know your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching again. Subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Letterboxd for more of my takes on movies. Again, thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.